Everyone. On ICE Daily Show by the Institute of Clinical Excellence. I am Alex Germano, a TA in the modern management of the older adult essential foundations, both in the online and live cohorts, and that's with lead faculty Dustin Jones and Christina Previtt. There are some upcoming online courses I wanted to plug before we get started today. Essential Foundations, the next online cohort starts May 13th, and for Advanced Concepts, that online cohort starts on May 20th. Also remember, there's a quarantine continuing education series. There's also Justin's pain series, as well as a nutrition lecture that are all for free on the website under the resources tab. So when we, today's topic is going to be low-level EMOMs and you know, this came up because when we talk about the importance of every minute on the minute style workouts in the course, and we talk about, you know, these rounds per time or AMRAPs, we are frequently met with, well, I couldn't do any of that with my patients. My patients lay down all day. They can only sit. I couldn't do this with them. This is way too hard. And there's a lot of difficulty in applying these concepts to the lower level patient. And so today I wanted to challenge that and give you 4 tips to make EMOMs work with these folks. So first, let's define this patient. I'm thinking this is somebody who can't really tolerate more than a few seconds of standing. Maybe somebody who primarily is laying down most of the day, like you get to their house and they're just flat out in their hospital bed, or somebody who finds sitting for long periods of time difficult. So that's kind of what I'm using to define my lower level patient. I'm going to use a whiteboard today to help work through a few different EMOMs that I have written out. And this is going to help us visualize how we can change the structure of these things to meet the patients where they're at, and also how we can progress them over time. So hopefully this works on Facebook. The video's flipped nicely, and on Instagram, I think I have it oriented correctly. So hopefully everyone can see. So the first tip I talk about is considering how I build in rest into EMOMs. So let's consider these examples. The first one, so this one up here at the top, every 2 minutes for 18 minutes, the patient is going to be doing interval 1 is 5 rolls from supine to right sideline. Interval 2 is 5 rolls from supine to left sideline. And then minute 3 is 15 chest press at an appropriate weight for that patient. So kind of getting them prepped to get stronger for their transfers, but also give them a little bit of a cardiovascular stimulus as well. Now, the thing with this one is that there's actually 2 minutes per interval. So instead of that like EMOMs, this is kind of an EMOM style, right? Where they have 2 minutes to complete 5 rolls to the right, 2 minutes for the left, and then 2 minutes for the chest press. And I really like this structure to start because it allows for a lot of rest between exercises. They're probably almost getting a minute or over a minute of rest. And, you know, you're trying to pick a number of reps here that gives them around, you know, a minute or more or less, depending on kind of the stimulus you desire. But this is a really nice place to start. They don't feel overwhelmed. They're not rushing right into the next exercise. But you're also starting to achieve that, you know, that EMOM style. You're starting to work that into your sessions. So the next one at the bottom here is going to be now that more that true EMOM style, right? EMOM 15. Minute 1 is 3 rolls to the right. Minute 2 is 3 rolls to the left, and then minute 3 is 10 chest press. So here I have decreased the repetitions, but now they've progressed to working on every single minute. They are still going to get a little bit of rest each minute, right? 3 rolls to the right might take them 30 to 40 seconds, meaning they're going to get about 30 to 40 seconds of rest, 30 to 20 seconds of rest each interval. So this one is, like I said, a bit of a progression, but they still have a bit of rest. Now we can even talk about the last progression on this side, EMOM 16, where they're doing 1 minute of max rolls to the right. So now they're just doing as many as they can for the full minute. Minute 2 is max rolls to the left. And then in minute 3 is max chest press. And then minute 4 is rest. So now what I have them doing is working for 3 full minutes, and then they only get 1 minute of rest at the end. This is definitely a big progression where they're actually working, you know, doing the max repetitions throughout the full minute. Granted, they don't need to be doing them fast, and these patients, they're probably not going to be, but you're going to try to get them working and keep them working for longer durations. So now I've really worked them up to working for 3 minutes, and they only get that 1 minute rest. And so they'll be performing that 4 times. And eventually you may be able to even cut that rest out. Okay, so that is kind of my first sequence of how I manipulate rest. Important stuff. So the second thing that I like to play with in EMOMs is the position of the exercise. So I really like to layer in less challenging positions with more challenging positions so that it's a nice way to keep the patient moving. And it really avoids those long, drawn-out rests that I know that your patients like to pull with you. I know mine do all the time. They're just like, I'm just going to sit for a minute or two. And so what I try to do is I try to at least give them like an exercise in sitting that they can perform. And that really helps us keep moving throughout the session. So I've actually written out a 3-week progression of an EMOM. We're going to go over this one too. This is the bigger whiteboard. Okay. So this is going to be an EMOM 20. We'll start over here. EMOM 20, minute 1, the patient is going to do floor reaches. So they're just going to be sitting, they're going to reach to the floor as far as they can and then sit back up. Minute 2 is going to be chair sit-ups. So now they're going to lean back as far as they can without losing their balance and sit up all the way. Minute 3 are going to be butt lift-offs. It's a fancy way, I guess, like they're going to just try to lift their butt and clear their butt as much as they can, or like a kind of like a tricep extension. Minute 4 is going to be seated marches with upper extremity support. And then minute 5 is going to be elbow to bed. So they're going to side bend onto one elbow, come back up to sitting, and then side bend to the left, and then come back to sitting. So that's going to keep them moving. They're going to do 4 rounds of that. I really like this because minute 1, 2, and 3 are all kind of like transfer prep. They're really functional exercises where they're starting to work on, increasing the weight moving forward. They're starting to like get a little bit of that butt lift off. And now what I can do is now in week 2, so I wrote it out in the middle here, I kind of progressed range of motion, and then maybe I added in a transfer if they're ready. So week 2, now instead of just reaching to the floor, they're going to be doing floor to ceiling reaches. So now they're going to have to manage a big anterior weight shift as well as a really big posterior weight shift. Then they're going to be doing trunk leans to butt lift off. So I've kind of combined 2 exercises. I've combined the sit up with the butt lift where they have to lean really far forward and then push themselves up. So again, kind of pre-transfer. Then minute 3 is going to be 1 transfer. And what I would ideally love is they did, here in the middle, if they did the 1 transfer, they would be able to, stand up the remainder of that minute. Now that might be too hard for the patient, and that's okay. But we're going from butt lift-offs to 1 transfer. So that's a big jump. Then minute 4 is I take them back to sitting. So instead of keeping them standing and trying to do more standing exercise as to not overwhelm this person, I go from 1 transfer and then I go back to the seated marches. I might do a variation here and do seated marches with the arms crossed. This way they get a little bit of a core challenge from it as well. Now minute 5, and I'm gonna just keep standard elbow to bed. They've done a lot of work. They've really progressed almost every exercise. So I might just like keep them doing those side bends back to the bed and back to sitting. Now, the last week, what we might do is add some weight. We might modify how much load we're giving them. We also might modify some range of motion. So what I've done here is now instead of just floor to ceiling reaches, I've added some weight. I've given them a ball slam. So you can do ball slams in sitting with your patients. I use like a 5-pound medicine ball here. Minute 2 is now changed to walker pushes. So I can load up walkers with weights. I can like layer ankle weights on top of just standard rolling walkers, or if it's a rollator, you can put weights on top, and you can do walker pushes forward and backward. So now you've almost created like a sled push and pull. Minute 3 is going to be 2 transfers. So now I've really progressed. This may be a lot and things that could be modified, but they're going to try to do 2 transfers today, and they're going to try to stand the remainder of that minute. Minute 4 has now gone to standing marches with bilateral upper extremity support. This may be too much for them. Again, you can scale it back to that sitting position if you want to layer in that sitting position again for them. But again, the bilateral upper extremity support, so maybe they feel a little bit more supported, but now they've progressed really to a standing march. And then lastly, you can do Russian twists. So this is an exercise I took them back to sitting, and they're just trying to move that medicine ball across their hips without touching their legs from left to right and trying to get the little bit of the twist. So this is a nice progression of how you would, maybe do this EMOM once a week with somebody, and here's how you can change things to layer in more standing exercises and move them away further and further away from their chairs. So as they start, standing more and they get more fit, I can do more and more with this. So the third tip I would consider is to really think about your exercise choices. I think a lot of people get stuck with the lower level patient because they can't see purely beyond standing exercise. Seated marches don't seem like the coolest exercise in the world. They're not the most fun, but for these patients, it might just bring a level of intensity that they need. So, and even like something like scooting forward, scooting back, scooting side to side is a really functional activity for most of our patients, but we can turn it into exercise. And that may be something that's really important for somebody to be able to do, and something we need to consider programming in our EMOMs. So pick exercises that keep the patient moving, relate it back to their functional movement problems, and make it fun. We need to be really creative and think beyond what people can do in standing, and start modifying exercises for that sitting or supine position. There's a few good, really good sitting balance measures or alpha measures that I use, that I basically just turn all of those items into EMOMs for my patients, and their functional outcome measures get really good, their sitting balance gets great. So think really beyond what you can do in standing, and try to think about any exercise you do in standing, how could you do it in sitting? And then what you need to do is make sure you're constantly checking in about intensity with this population. Because for us, if I was to do seated marches, I may never get my RPE up, but for them, it may feel like an 8 and they're not saying it. So you need to be prompting constantly throughout the workouts to measure RPE and really assess if you have hit the appropriate intensity for the day. Now, my fourth tip is to write the EMOM out for them and explain what you're doing. So just like I did with you guys today, don't let exercises be a surprise for this population. I never get good feedback from my patients when I say, we're gonna do 1 more minute of the sit-ups, we're gonna do 1 more minute of the push-ups. That usually doesn't work well. So what I do is I program in front of them the EMOM for the day. I explain what I'm doing and why we're doing it. And then, I just set them up with I set up really great expectations at the start of my session so that we achieve great success during the session. So that's something I really hope you guys consider doing while you program these lower level EMOMs for patients. And sorry, they're not lower level EMOMs, they're EMOMs for lower level patients. So these are actually quite hard and actually really provide sufficient intensity for your sessions. So I really hope this was helpful. That's all I have for you today. I hope you guys have a great Wednesday, and hopefully I'll be back here to chat with you guys again. All right, bye.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the PT on Ice Daily Show. If you enjoyed this content, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. And be sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at the Institute of Clinical Excellence. If you're interested in getting plugged into more ICE content on a weekly basis while earning CEUs from home, check out our virtual ICE online mentorship program at ptonice.com. While you're there, sign up for our Hump Day Hustling newsletter for a free email every Wednesday morning with our top 5 research articles and social media posts that we think are worth reading. Head over to ptonice.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up.